Hi, this is Penny Lyon from Out of the Ashes, and this is number 2 in our series of Music and Friends. And today I'm going to introduce you to my friend, Andrew Longhurst. Right, this is my friend, Andrew Longhurst, mine and Kevin's friend, Andrew Longhurst. And I met Andrew 2 years ago. Andrew, how long ago did we meet?
Oh, it seems forever.
Oh, thanks. Could you try a little bit harder, please?
It was about 2 years ago, yeah. It was
about 2 years ago.
Almost exactly, to the day almost.
Oh. And what happened from my point of view is we wanted to record a video for Get Out the Boat. And Kevin was toying with trying to do a green screen shoot because we kind of knew what we wanted to do, and it was desperately ambitious. And we'd already done the still shoot for the album in front of a piece of green fabric at our home in Gloucestershire.
Yeah.
But now this was looking like a step too far. And Kevin found that there was this studio in Stroud that we had no idea existed that had a green screen. So we came along to have a look, and there were you.
There I was.
And we kind of chatted, didn't we? And you started asking questions, and they were quite searching questions. And suddenly it became apparent that I was a Christian, and we were a Christian band. And you kind of went, right! And you switched on. Well, you'd switched on anyway, but you knew what you were dealing with. So come on, talk to me.
What do you want to know?
Well, what I want to know is what you remember of that first time we met. Let's start off with that.
Okay. What I remember of that first meeting was you coming in with this cover and understanding that we had a green screen studio.
This is the album cover.
The album cover, which was very cartoony. And it reminded me immediately of Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which was one of my favourite films when I was a child. It doesn't stand up to the test of time quite so well, but it was a wonderful thing, and it was a mixture of live action and cartoon characters, which Disney had done. And I just mentioned that, or something along those lines, and suddenly Kevin was very excited. He had the idea. He'd already tried doing some animation on this, and he said, "Can we do something where we mix this?" And we said, "Yeah." And you said, "How much?" It's the story that it's a question that everyone asks.
50p, please.
Yeah, it's the question. No. You didn't even have a budget. You said how much, and I think I said something like, "Well, that's going to be expensive, and I think we won't go into the actual figures and all that kind of thing." But I said, this could cost millions of pounds. How much do you want to spend? How accurate? Yeah. No, but I remember saying that to you. How much do you want to spend? And you said something. Your budgets were somewhat smaller than that. And I just remember Kevin's enthusiasm and yours for doing something, and we already had experience of doing animation, but more of a corporate side, using photorealistic backgrounds and working with 3D environments. But we'd never done anything with cartoons before, per se, although cartoons are used a lot by other people. And so we ummed and ahed about it and thought about it, and eventually came up with the idea that, okay, we can do something where we film you, and we'll put these, essentially bring to life that cover photo, the album cover, and we'll bring it to life, and we'll make that the set. And we'll film you for real in the studio, and then we'll put all of this behind you and in front of you and create an animated feature, an animated thing. and we did. And we charged you whatever we charged you. It wasn't that much for what it was.
No, we were. There is always this phrase, isn't there? Gave 110%. And I suspect we got about 250%.
Well, the thing is, often with these things, and you'll know this, sometimes something speaks to you, doesn't it? And it says, do you know what? This is a really good thing to do. And you've got no idea why. You just have, you intuit that there is something about this which is worth doing. As long as you can cover your costs, it's worth doing. It's just worth doing. And so that's what we did. We covered our costs. And we turned out that first video for you, and it
And
was
won an award
extraordinary.
with it.
And we learned some, and we kind of we developed a relationship with you almost immediately, and it went on to win an award. And Pete Barnes, who was working with us at the time, and still is, works for us as a freelancer, did most of the animation. In fact, he did all the animation. And I did the original direction and did all the, gave it the creative spin. And he took that and did marvellous things with it. And I think I filmed the first one or two with you, and then all the rest he filmed with you because he understood what needed to happen. So it became a really interesting way of working, and it was very interesting for me to actually let go and let someone else do all this, because of course we all as creators want to be involved in the whole creative thing. But actually he did a stunningly good job on it. He did a really, really good job on it, and we turned that out, and that's how we met. We started off with the maddest project, and it just spoke to me and said, this is worth doing, and we learnt a lot from it.
Now, just tell our audience a little bit about what first of all, your background, because one of the things that really struck me about you is you understood music. You weren't somebody that was just about filming. You understood music, and you understood the music industry. What is your background, Andrew?
It's just taken me a lifetime to come to, and it's interesting. You asked me before we had this chat. You said, we'd want to talk to you about this, and so I gave it some thought, curiously. So my background is I was brought up by my mother and father. My father was a policeman. My mother was a housewife and did all sorts of domestic work to keep the wolf from the door. There were 5 of us in the family, and my mother had an absolute joy. Her joy was listening to music. She used to listen to classical music and show tunes, Sound of Music, South Pacific, lots of Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, or Prokofiev. The thing was, from when I was very small, I remember my mother telling me the stories that went with these pieces of music, particularly the orchestral stuff.
Interesting.
So I had a very direct, you hear someone telling you these stories and you see them in your mind. So I had a very direct visual and very visceral connection to music and how it worked. And I never actually went and had any lessons or got trained, but I decided I wanted to do something with music, but I didn't know what.
Yeah.
And then I started listening to progressive rock and various other things, and it's just about the time when synthesizers came in, and I was fascinated by synthesizer. And at that point, of course, it did sonically things that nothing else could do. So I built one to find out exactly what it could do. I'd spent 2 years annoying my friends, sitting at those parties that we used to have, playing air synthesizer, not being a keyboard. I couldn't play. But I was doing Rick Wakeman solos and thinking that made me look very interesting. as you do when you're young and feckless. And then I thought, well, I better get one of these things. So I bought one. I bought a kit for a Transcendent 2000, which was an electronic musician special offer. It was £200. And I started building it and realised I knew nothing about electronics. So I got someone else to build it for me. And it worked. And then I went on to hire different synths to understand more about how sound was shaped. And I still couldn't play very well, but I really, really got to understand sound through that. And I had my first of many epiphanies. And epiphanies is this is kind of my theme for this. So my first epiphany was, I didn't know how to do electronics, but as long as I knew someone that did, they could build it for me, and I didn't need to know about electronics. I just needed to know that someone built it. But for me, the end goal was I wanted this thing built so I could make sound. And the process was get it built. Even if you can't build it yourself, pay someone else, they'll do it. And I did. That was my first little epiphany. And epiphanies are strange things. So, and it does come into my, I will go on, I'll try and make this as short as possible. Do you remember the first US space missions?
I'm awfully young, Andrew. No, yes, I do.
So there's an apocryphal story which said that the Americans spent $1 million creating a pen that would write in zero gravity.
It's not apocryphal, it's a real story, isn't it? Please tell me it's real.
And the Russians thought about the same problem which was, how do we allow people to write in space? And they said, pencil, right? So, and what that is a perfect example of someone or of people who are not doing the job, who are not flying into space, who haven't built the rockets, who are not astronauts, who are not physicists, looking at a problem and understanding enough about all the parameters of the problem to say, what you want to do is write in space. Yeah, use a pencil. That is essentially my career. Production. And I started off in music, and I had studios and did all these things. But all the way along, it was realizing I was never a very good keyboard player. And I do play keyboards, as you know, but I was never very good. But I'm really good with sound. And because I understood sound and how it works, I was able to understand all of the technologies of the recording process, compressors, gates, all of this stuff, EQ, mixing, blending. And because I understood orchestras, I understood how to make these, layer these arrangements and do these things. And I couldn't do any of them very well, but I did all of them with enough gusto that the dots kind of connected and I was doing significant stuff. And then I got out of that, I moved up to Gloucestershire, and a friend of mine was doing something. I started doing voiceovers and corporate music for much the same reasons. I understood how they should work. I just looked at the problem, understood how they should. Now, this wasn't a conscious thing. It's just, it's suddenly going, oh, that's how it works. And they were making videos at the time. And again, I saw, and by the way, I'd done touring and all sorts of other things in the meantime. But I saw this video process, and it was costing them £125,000 to make a single video at the time. And I went on one of their shoots and I followed the process, and I thought, you're mad. So for some reason, I persuaded them that I should produce the next video for them. Not direct it, just produce it.
You're quite persuasive.
Well,
that's
yeah,
quite a hard thing to persuade somebody to do. That takes persuasiveness.
It's because I already knew production. I knew what it's that start with the beginning part, which is, what are you trying to do? I'm trying to make a video. Why? What's it for? It's to do this thing. It's to have this purpose, whether it's to educate or to entertain or to engage. It's that process. And I just saw all this money being wasted. Big names. Why do you need big names for learning? Why do you need that? You don't. It's a trend. Don't do that. We'll go and hire a cast. We'll go and find a cast, and we'll bring them up, and we'll film it ourselves, and we'll do it all ourselves, and we'll bring in a really good director and really good cameramen and sound people. The next one, not 125,000. The next one cost £28,000, and then it came down and down and down and down. I did hundreds of those, hundreds. And still, it didn't occur to me exactly why. These were, these epiphanies, as we call them. They're connecting the dots, the moments of lucidity. And what's really interesting about epiphanies, the word epiphany was, I seem to recall, it's the revelation to the Gentiles of Christ, of him becoming visible. And it also means a sudden and striking revelation, a moment of lucidity, connecting the dots. And I guess with you and with all that we do and everything I do now, I've realized that it's all about moments of epiphany. It's suddenly seeing with absolute clarity something which I don't have to understand all of these different functions within this process. I just have to understand, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? How and then I'll work out how you're going to get there and deliver that. And then putting, the creative side just sits on top of that. But you have to understand all those bits, and you don't have to understand how to do the filming. You don't have to understand all of the cameras. You just need to understand enough to know what the process is, and sound, and editing, and codecs, and blah, 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 blah. So our relationship was based on that. So when we came to do Pray That Prayer, we had an opportunity to do something you'd not done, and neither had we, which was, you very kindly, again, trusted me. And I said, we're going to use the most expensive camera in the world, and we're going to bring in a really professional crew, and they're going to cost a fortune. They cost us less than I think they cost us a third or a quarter of what they should have done. It was something ridiculous, but they liked the idea because we came up with this idea of filming this thing in a derelict theatre with real dancers. It was originally 20 dancers, which became 8, but a whole band, 11 people on stage in a derelict, freezing cold theatre.
Unbelievably cold, yes.
But we filmed this in 6K using a really expensive camera, a Red, and the output from it, what resulted from that, was a wonderful, wonderful, evocative piece, a wonderful video, which isn't just a music video. I think it captures so much of what your message is about.
Yeah.
And again, that was an epiphany. It was one of those moments. Do you remember we were at that shoot and we'd had one idea. We had a way of opening and closing the thing. And whilst I was there was so much going technically wrong. We lost the electricals for about an hour. We were supposed to be filming for 8 hours. It ended up being 3.5 hours of filming.
Was it really?
Yeah. Most of the dancers had to go. We had lighting problems. The lighting guy disappeared for 2 hours. We lost electricity for an hour. We had 3.5 hours of filming. And so we had to redo everything. And the thing about this epiphany, this sudden realization, is it's seeing the whole thing, everything before you, and what the output is, and what is possible, and going, okay, we're going to do this instead. And it's an instant. You suddenly go, right, that's what we're going to do. And I changed what we were going to do on the day so that we told the story of the sweeper. Do you remember?
Oh, I remember the story of the
sweeper. That wasn't in the original storyboard. That just occurred to us. And you said you wanted to have the owner of, or the guy that ran the theatre, what's his name?
Phil McCormick.
Phil McCormick. You wanted to feature him somehow, and so we did. And it told a story. So doing that, which was completely unintended, we were able to tell the story and do this thing and take people back in time and do this wonderful video. And that worked for us enormously well because we'd, of course, shot a proper cinema-grade music video. And we told a lovely story. And you got a brilliant video, which I think has done okay for you.
It's done really well for us, yeah, absolutely.
And it got all of us attention. So that's kind of how we met and how we ended up doing the second video. And I'm sure we're doing more.
Well, I suspect we will.
And those epiphanies are what, my biggest epiphany and latest one is that epiphanies, if you open your eyes to them, happen to you every day about both the nature of being, our relationship with the world, with God, with other people, with communities, businesses. And more importantly, we always think of epiphanies as being something that happens to us. It's I've suddenly realized I've done something wrong, or I could do something better. Oh, I know, I'll do this. But as we see from the Russian pencil versus American pen example, epiphanies also apply to our view of other people and the problems they present us with. And that
one
means
of the things that really comes out of this for me is that if you approach something with a generous spirit, you receive so much more from it. And I'm being reminded of that as we're talking here, but I think that's such a key thing to learn in life, isn't it? The more generous we are in our spirits as we do anything, come along with a good attitude, as somebody put it, and you just get so much more out of life as a result.
And I think that's how our relationship began and has continued, which is we all have doubts. Some of us are more sort of evangelical in our beliefs, and some of us are less so. We just live our lives through example. I tend to be of the latter, you tend to be of the former. But we're on the same path. And I think what was really interesting about getting involved with you guys was that just that understanding that I've no idea why we should do this thing, and then why we should have done the original cartoon at cost, and pretty much the same with the next one as well. But there was just something there speaking to me, and sometimes you just have to trust these things, and that's another. Sometimes you just have to trust that it's the right thing to do. You have to listen. Some people call that intuition, other people call that faith. And this year has been terrible for many. It's been absolutely terrible. And for us, it's been amazing. We have moved and grown, and we've got into things we would never have done. We're making so much more with everything we're doing. And that's also then, the payback is, okay, don't just take this for granted. The payback is we now make sure we include everyone we can that's worked with us to make sure they're okay, to give them work, to pay them for doing things that aren't necessarily, they're not necessarily.
But it keeps people alive.
But it keeps people there. So you have to kind of put back in. You have to put back in, and being gentle and being generous is exactly that. Exactly that, and it does come back.
Andrew Longhurst, I think we've talked probably for far longer than we were allowed to, but you are, as ever, wonderful, entertaining, insightful, and incisive. Thank you. Andrew
Thank you,
Longhurst,
Penny.
everybody.
Yeah, take care.
So that was Andrew Longhurst. And next week, I'm going to be doing another interview with somebody who's been a friend of mine for a long time, but you are likely to know her as a media doctor. Wait and see.